Hey, Ashley. Hey, Inga.
Hey, let me just double check my attendee list, see if anyone else is.
Is everybody?
Yeah, I think so. All right. I'm Ashley Schultz with Tool Design.
I'm Inga Kennedy with PEQ, part of the Tool Design Consulting team.
Brian Smith with Raleigh Parks Rec and Cultural Resources.
Mike, you're on mute.
Thank you. Mike Udekuns, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources.
And I'm Terry Nolan with Wake County Planning.
All right.
Okay. All right. That's our group.
Chris,
It's like I could introduce myself, but you all know who I am, so let's use our time more productively.
All right. Well, you said it, so we'll get to it. Went through trail classifications information, and I just wanted to add just a couple of thoughts behind some of the three trails that he mentioned, and that is that kind of the idea around the user expectations of that trail is in the name. It's like pseudo name. So destination trails would connect people to destinations. Scenic trails and loops connect people to recreational and natural area opportunities. And local trails link to other trails and provide access to neighborhoods. So I think the first question we have for you all is just, what are your thoughts about basing trail classifications off of user expectations? Any thoughts are welcome, like whatever comes to the top of your head.
Well, I think, sorry, go ahead. Go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. The first thought that came to mind, I guess, user expectations are different. So I like that. I like the idea. It's kind of simple for me to think about destination trails, scenic trails. In my head, I go to, well, I guess expectations are different for everyone using them. And then also, could some trails be a combination of both? And how do you classify that? Ones like kind of is a destination trail, scenic trail, or that type of thing.
Great point.
So Ashley, do you think, in response to Mike's question, I mean, you're using the term destination trail, but that's not going to be the official classification name for it. So if it had a different name that was more encompassing, then maybe that category could be the one that's oriented towards both. I anticipate that being like one of the highest volume user trail types.
Yeah, and I think, this system is so expansive, and if we're talking about having stream corridor trails and urban trails and, side of the street trails, that's a lot of different types of trails, and that can create a different user expectation too. So, I think the trail classifications will simplify that, but there will be some like room for nuance or just a little bit of, I think, decision making on the Parks and Rec departments, and based off of the public's feedback about a specific trail or its placement, etc. Nick, hey.
Hello there. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. A privilege.
Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question about how you envision this looking. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think what initially comes to mind is signage, and you're already working with a general public that struggles with being overwhelmed by signage, and so I'm just curious about has there been any thoughts or discussion around, okay, let's say this all is approved and then you move forward on it, destination, local, and scenic types of trails, I suppose, or however you want to describe it. Are you suggesting that there would be 3 new types of signage or colors, or like what would the system look like? I guess the wayfinding, yeah.
Yeah, I don't foresee us changing the wayfinding other than maybe coming up with new sign design, like a new sign type. We're actually working on that now because our signs are kind of limited in the information that they can provide on them, just because they're kind of small. So we are developing a destination sign that can have like a list of 8 different destinations in whatever direction people are going. But I think to answer your question about the difference in the classifications, I don't think it's going to be so much about the physical design of the trails. It's going to be more about the amenities that are on the individual trails. So if a trail is classified as a destination trail, which means that people are using it for transportation, then maybe that's a trail that we look more seriously at for potentially adding lighting. It could be something that, like the bike repair stations that we only have 3 of them on the system now, but we might want to put more of those in an area that we know is being used for transportation. I'm thinking like from a pedestrian perspective, pedestrians are more likely to have dogs with them. Maybe we'll put like the doggy stations more frequently, and these are just examples. There's definitely more.
Well, and Chris, can I just say, I think these are great examples, because just in that alone being articulated, I can imagine very real scenarios where we'll use the destination trail as an example, where maybe like here's like a real life situation that came up, at least with me and some friends a week or 2 ago. We were here at the food hall off of Chavis Way, Greenway, and pretty late in the evening, a friend of mine was leaving to get on the Greenway and ride down to Umstead Park. Now, I thought it was a bit much because it's late at night, and of course he's like, I'm fine, I've done this before. He was really looking forward to the bike ride, and he's in part doing it because he's training for like a larger cycling race, etc., whatever. But the point of it is, he was planning to go all the way out to Umstead, fairly late. Yeah. And so my concern was, safety, lighting, etc. So just hearing you sort of, articulate, well, maybe if we know for, so-called destination trails where people are going to be going, fairly long stretches, from, one side of the city all the way to NCMA, Dix Park, Umstead Park, wherever. Maybe we want to, incorporate additional lighting, maybe repair stations, et cetera, just because, obviously things can happen up and down the trailway. So I really, that to me is a really helpful comment to make in relation to the, it's not so much this emphasis on signage and I mean, that'll be what it is, but it really has more to do with maybe focusing what sort of, I guess, amenities or what the infrastructure sort of looks like, right, depending on the type of trail. So like you said, if it's maybe a more neighborhood-based trail, like a local trail, well, maybe have a few more, doggy bag and trash stations that you might have on the destination trail. So yeah, that's a great example. Thank you.
Sure.
And thank you, Ashley, for taking the question initially.
Yeah, no, that's a great clarification. Are there any, thinking of it in that framework, thinking of it from going on this type of trail, this experience, these amenities, this design, this level of maintenance, perhaps, what are some thoughts that you have there about what those things, what those expectations would be?
Ashley, you're cutting in and out on my end. I don't know
Oh, really?
how everybody.
Yeah, mine too.
Darn. Well, I was basically asking, what would your expectations be if you were going on, a destination trail or, scenic trail, for the different types of classifications? What do you think those expectations for users should be?
To me, sort of like the intuitively on the scenic and loop trail stuff, I do natural resources work for PRCR. That would be where I would hope to have the opportunity to do some of the nature trail type stuff that we've talked about. Have smaller loops that come off of the Greenway that are sort of single track paths that might have some interpretive signage on them, and or points where you've got specific things to look at or a view, that sort of thing. That sure there are other things that would be considered there. Lens that I have, that's what jumps to mind.
That's great. Mike, Nick, Terry, any thoughts?
I guess I'll jump in on the flip side with the destination trails. I guess my expectation would be that they would be a little bit more utilitarian, getting from point A to point B, perhaps more direct, and not quite as meandering.
Terry, just a follow-up question to that. To me, there is a difference between a Greenway trail and a multi-use path that's on the side of the road. And for me, it's about, I'm getting feedback. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. And so for me, I feel like there's a different feeling when you're on the Greenway system. So for you, I totally understand what you're saying with a more direct route. But with that more direct route, even if it's along a road, is there some kind of design feature, like maybe more setbacks or more landscaping or something like that, that would differentiate that experience from just riding on a multi-use path that's next to a road?
I mean, my personal experience in this region is that most of the Greenway trails aren't very direct and don't connect well to multiple destinations.
Right.
And it is a very different experience to be simply on a parallel path next to a roadway. I guess, it's just my expectation that, as we build out these connections a little bit more to help connect places to different destinations, that, that would be something to be considered, is, having a more direct connection, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. I was just wondering if there were any design features of that more direct connection that would make it feel more like a Greenway, or differentiate it as a Greenway versus just a regular multi-use path.
Well, I mean, it could still be within the Greenway, but just not, within the Greenway corridor, but just not be as meandering. I know that, we have those curves in our pathway system for kind of aesthetic reasons oftentimes, but it's just not as a direct pathway to get from point A to point B.
Okay.
Can I ask a question to clarify? I guess, are there, maybe examples you could give as to what, comes to mind for you in differentiating, let's say, a destination path versus a local path?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be different pavement material, maybe some kind of decals that are on the pavement. But the thing that stands out to me mostly is the landscaping around it and the buffer between the trail and the traffic that's next to it. So if you've been on like a parkway trail, I'm from the DC area, and most of the highways have a trail that are parallel to them. But they're set back far enough, and sometimes they're separated by a sound wall or just enough trees that you still feel like you're on a greenway, even though you're really in an urban area.
Well, I think that's a very relevant point to make. I mean, obviously, if you've got a trail running up or near, a highway or, a major roadway, I think being mindful of those elements for, I think I'm hearing both a safety concern and sort of, relationship here between the trailway rider, but then also just overall experience, which I think there's like two separate conversations there. There's one about just safety and trying to create space between the rider and, vehicles. But then also the overall experience, which, it sounds like there are little ways in which you can make for, a more comfortable, like long stretch of a ride. And so I certainly appreciate that consideration. I guess where I would want to limit my, feedback or thoughts here, at least initially, I don't want to present myself as like an expert on the design of greenways and et cetera. But if you're, along with the rest of the team, and following through on this master plan, giving that some consideration, I think it's certainly well worth it. I think being mindful of both the safety and overall experience of the riders, especially with these, and I guess you're really asking a question about the difference between a destination trail, that experience, and say a local trail and that experience. And then of course in the scenic trail and everything else. But, I guess it'd be helpful for me to see examples of what what the team, I guess, is sort of considering. And then I could kind of comment on it from there, but I wouldn't want to present myself as an expert on design of greenways and, make suggestions that are just sort of outrageous. And hearing you talk about it, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I want our riders to be safe. I want them to have a good experience.
Right.
But if I know that I'm going to pop on like I've got this Chavis Way Greenway over here, walking up and down the Greenway, I'm also right next to actual green space where I can step into these open fields and throw a Frisbee around with friends and neighbors and their kids.
It feels a lot different than, say, the multi-use path that's on Falls of News Road.
Yeah.
Ashley, do you want to move on to the next? Unless somebody else has something.
Yeah, so I guess that conversation about the design was really interesting because, as Chris just mentioned, the multi-use path along Falls of New Roads, we do already have some of these paths that are roadside, but this is a kind of a unique opportunity to rethink how we design greenway trails or other infrastructure that is in the roadway or near the road. So, and I appreciate Terry for bringing that up. Thank you. I guess one thing we haven't really touched on is thinking about, we've talked a lot about destination trails, a little bit about scenic trails, but for like a local trail, if you're leaving your home, getting on a nearby greenway, assuming there is one, you're walking there, you're biking there, it's close to you. And it's going to be like a short walk, maybe to a nearby park, or maybe you're using it to get to play Frisbee with your neighbors. What sort of experience do you want to have on that very like localized in your neighborhood, in your community trail?
And Ashley, while everyone's contemplating, Benjamin has just let us know we have 5 minutes.
Thanks, Inga. So I guess part of this can be thinking of those things like the amenities that we've been talking about. Do you expect there to be lighting there? Do you want there to be no lighting there? Or other like community art, any sort of things like that?
Well, First of all, I just wanted, I'm prepared to jump in and reply, but I was also trying to create space for others to participate. So I'll try to limit my comment here to like a minute or less. First of all, I love how seamless just using, again, Chavis Way, because it's right here in a neighborhood, you know, it's such a seamless transition onto the trail, onto the grass, into these neighborhoods. I mean, it feels very much a part of the neighborhood fabric, number one. Number two, yes, lighting is very important because people are walking these trails day and night. And I think lighting is very, very important up and down these trails, no matter where they are. So while, yes, I think on the destination side of it, that's obviously of great importance. Even here within the context of a neighborhood, I would not lose sight of that. But then you also bring up a great point, Ashley, about artwork. You know, there's a terrific opportunity from a public engagement sort of point of view, from the standpoint of just, you know, interacting and facilitating a real sense of ownership from a neighborhood over a part of the Greenway, and maybe even, you know, through sort of instigating a public process and identifying artwork along the trail. Who knows, that might lead sort of subconsciously to neighborhoods and communities taking an extra step and effort in maintaining that space, maintaining the Greenway. Because now they feel like, oh, you know, this is really true to us. This is really a part of our fabric, our community, our neighborhood. And when we see trash along the way, we're going to pick it up. So I like that, Ashley. Thank you.
I just have a question that might spark some ideas too is, does anybody think that the local trails should be more connected to the development that's around them than the longer distance trails? Like, should there be more eyes on them?
Well, I think there's a question in response about what sort of development are you referring to, number one. And then number
Whatever
two,
is in the community. So if it's like a residential neighborhood,
yeah.
should it be a part of the fabric of the neighborhood, or should it be like a natural corridor and, you know, you kind of feel like you're out in the middle of the woods?
Oh, gotcha. Well, I think there's that sort of balance, and if there's, I suppose it's a question of, if you know in advance there's some sort of development planned kind of along the, maybe either currently existing trailway or, you know, kind of, or maybe, you know, there's like an expansion of the Greenway happening kind of, and then there's potential development that may occur. You know, I guess ultimately finding ways to engage, you know, the whomever's involved with the development project. I think there's such a specific question that comes up as to who's involved with the development, what's the degree of their interest. You know, like you said, is it residential, is it commercial, yada, yada, yada. For us here at the property, we just happen to be a mix of both. I've got 15 townhomes right there off the Greenway, in addition to the commercial development. Now, at the long and the short of it is, I think to the point of sort of eyes on the Greenway, the more eyes, the better at the end of the day, because you're talking about, I mean, I'm sure it's a concept we've all read about and heard about, you know, 1,000 times, this whole notion of sort of like a passive surveillance that just sort of happens by, you know, having sort of general activity around the Greenway. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Okay. And, you know, whether it's happening as a result of, you know, residential, you know, development or commercial, regardless, it's a good thing. And so I think if there's a way, I mean, it's like, you know, the question to me is, you know, how you engage the various stakeholders. But I guess at the end of the day, I would, you know, think about how we've been engaged, how, you know, and I guess when I think about it, we've, at least over the last 3 years, we've...
And Nick, we're going to interrupt here in just a second because we're being told that the breakout room is going to close in
5 seconds.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so, but feel free